I'd like to introduce the senior pastor, Kevin Lee. He's at Calvary Church at Port Orchard in Washington State, and he founded the church in 1993. But before that, he was in the Navy, and he worked in the nuclear engineering department at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, where he taught naval nuclear reactor plant design and operations to engineers. So he knows the Bible and he knows science, and he's going to connect the two, and I am so excited. Everybody, this is Pastor Kevin Lee.
Yeah, hi, Brian. Thank you. It's been a wonderful conference so far. Much of the information I'll be sharing here today was partially covered in previous presentations. And so we're going to assume to a certain extent that people that are listening saw some or most of that, but I'm also going to do it in a way that if somebody's just joining for this presentation, that we won't leave them in the dark and go too fast. But today we're doing, I want to emphasize the predictive power of the hydroplate theory. As other people have emphasized, you should be able, if your theory has any chance of really being accurate, you're going to be able to make predictive estimations of what's going to happen. And then those things come true. And if a bunch of them don't come true, then you know you've got a problem. So that's what I'm going to be emphasizing after we lay the foundation of this information about comets and asteroids. So I was, and by the way, I wanted to show this screen to show that this is the cover of the 9th edition of Walt Brown's book. And it is soon going to be out, and we're looking forward to that. So this presentation is based on the hydroplate theory of Dr. Walt Brown. That I believe God gave him the wisdom to let us know the details of the flood for these last days. And I also wanted to say that as all of the many of the presenters tried to go to ICC to offer our desire to present this information at the recent creation conference. And I got a letter, actually Jane was giving a letter about my stuff. I was not able to garner excitement to proposal from the reviewer. So they weren't excited. I don't know if anybody's going to get excited today, but I'm excited because all the evidence that's coming back from space probes is supporting the hydroplate theory premise that comets, asteroids, trans-Neptunian objects were material ejected from Earth into highly elliptical orbits in some case, rounded out in asteroid case. And I want to also give a shout out to Randy Galusa, who's the CEO of ICR, who in December of last year was excited enough to at least let his people understand what we believe. And he invited me and other hydroplate theory advocates to headquarters in Dallas, where I presented a different version of this back last year. And I also want to thank him for his work, unique to ICR, doing real science about engineered adaptability instead of survival of the fittest, which contributes to a hydroplate theory problem of how, if the whole world was flooded with water at one time, and what was it, salt water or fresh water? Well, if it was salt water, then how did the freshwater fish survive or come to be? And vice versa. Well, Randy Galusa has shown that God, in his infinite wisdom of creation, issued humans and animals and probably plants too, engineered adaptability so that a freshwater fish had an options package in it to be able to also live in saltwater and saltwater freshwater. And some of those adaptabilities can be run out over generations, like with the blind fish that they're studying right now. But I really appreciate the fact that Randy Galusa is open to just, hey, if somebody's got a theory, let's hear it, instead of censoring it and keeping people from promoting it from their perspective. So that's what's going on. Comets is going to be our subject. Most people know what comets are, and we have some that are recently going to be up in the sky, possibly maybe even seen without the aid of telescopes. There's asteroids, rocky objects. That the asteroid belt is in the area that we see here with the white, and then there's asteroids that are outside of that orbit that are crossing all kinds of planetary orbital paths. They're worried about asteroids with our name on it that someday that would collide with the Earth. That's going to be important in our future discussion. So what are they? What a non-HPT young Earth creationist says, and this is Jason Lyle, he thinks they're part of the creation. There have been speculations that the asteroids came from an exploded planet, but when I run their trajectories back in time, they never converge within the biblical timeline, which is really a bad orbital physics answer, because I can't even believe he said that, actually. Likewise, each comet has its unique orbit. Losing mass on each pass by the sun also completely avoids the question that was asked. And but that's what he said in an email of November 20th, 2022. And what do they say about the organic molecules being found on comets and asteroids? Because every single probe that has gone to collect material or to see the light spectrometry to know what is around the comet or asteroid has determined that there are organic molecules being found. 67P, comet 67P, they landed on that. 14 complex organic molecules. What they say is it's all contamination. And that's going to be a problem if creationists continue, if the big boys decide to keep stuck on that. We're going to be looking like the Catholic Church denying the fact that the sun was the center of the solar system until 1992. And at 1992, the Pope finally agreed with the rest of the world that knew the facts long before he did, that the sun is the center of the solar system. The Catholic Church thought the Earth was going to be the center of the solar system, and it took them that long to come to the fact that the sun is the center of the solar system. And I sure hope that the creation movement unifies in the fact that the evidence is piling up that either God created comets and asteroids with organic molecules, strands of DNA, etc., that they're finding, or they weren't part of the creation. So does the Bible support the position that comets and asteroids are part of the six-day creation? This is a comment that other people have been using in their presentations. God saw that everything was very good when he was done with creation. He said the stars and the moon and the sun. He didn't mention asteroids and comets. There are asteroids that have done much devastation to the Earth. This is the Chelyabinsk meteor that occurred in February of 2013 over Russia, did much damage, as other people have pointed out these slides. And so they didn't even see it coming. It was coming in it was 12,000 ton asteroid at 40,000 miles an hour. They're worried about an extinction level asteroid that's headed towards Earth. So billions of dollars are being spent by nations all around the world in the joint effort to detect an asteroid that has a path that will cross Earth and therefore collide with Earth. And also billions of dollars trying to find, speculate and test ways to change the orbit, if they need to, of an asteroid before it would come and hit the Earth. And the Bible says that there's going to be, it appears to say that there's future asteroids that are going to hit the Earth. And during the tribulation period, a third angel sounded, trumpet judgment of Revelation, for those of us that believe that these things are yet future. And a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch. It fell on the third of the rivers and the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was made bitter. There's going to be, that's what a comet or asteroid hitting the Earth would look like, a star falling from heaven. And we know that the asteroid Apophis is going to barely miss us by 20,000 miles. In other words, as the Earth is traveling, Apophis is going to go through our orbit from 20 minutes ago on April 13th, 2029. If it were to hit, it would be the equivalent of 1,000 1 megaton bombs. And tomorrow, the OSIRIS-REx space probe is going to be dropping its Bennu asteroid collection of material onto Earth. It's going to crash into Utah. I mean, it's parachute into Utah, bringing Bennu asteroid material to Earth. We're going to talk about that later. And then NASA is going to send the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft, out to go make a rendezvous with Apophis to study more about this asteroid that might have our name on it in 2029. And the Bible seems to also indicate future awareness that the human population might be told, hey, we're sorry, but we're about to be hit with an impact of an asteroid that's going to hit at this location and nobody's going to be able to survive. Because it says, and there will be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars and on the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. That would maybe, I'm speculating here, indicating that it's going to be something that hits the ocean. Men's hearts failing them for fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth. And that's in Luke chapter 21. Again, what does that really mean? We don't know. I think it could fit into the scenario of Jesus saying that there's going to be these things happening as far as Revelation, etc. So how can it be good that these things would be happening? Of course, it's not good. Then God saw everything he made. It was very good. Genesis 1:31. Comets, asteroids are not very good. And I think biblically, emphatically, they cannot be part of the good creation. They were not part of the creation. And that's the premise, one of the premises of the rest of this presentation, that they came about. So if they weren't part of the creation, well, when did they come to be? And I think strongly the evidence is, and the biblical evidence is, that it was at the flood, at the initiation of the flood. So again, based on hydroplate theory in the beginning, 9th edition coming out soon. In Genesis, it says that on one day, all the fountains of the great deep burst up, and the windows of heaven were open, and it rained 40 days and 40 nights. And I'm assuming that fountain is water and not magma. It's really hard for a fountain of magma to cause global rainfall for 40 days and nights, as other people have talked about in earlier studies of this conference. But I'm just going to use this as a Brian Nickel animation, many of them through this presentation. I had him turn the Canon up for the purposes of this presentation. The Canon is the crack in the Earth's crust that allowed the subterranean water, supercritical water, to escape, turning all of its thermal and pressure energy into kinetic energy. As soon as the crack ruptures, then this is what happens. Some of that escaping water through the crack would just go up and become global rainfall. It's not going to go up high enough because it's going to be on the edge of the crack, etc. There's going to be some that comes just down and becomes global rainfall for 40 days. Some of it's going to go with higher velocity, and it's going to go up into space, but not at the velocity of 7 miles a second, which is what it takes to escape Earth's gravity well. As we can see, that's a gravity well that it's trying, Earth has a gravity well. It's going to suck everything in that comes into that well, but because of its gravitational attraction. And so then you have some that goes way up, freezes carbon dioxide into dry ice, water into super cold frozen water, come down and do ice dumps all over the world that are going to, in some places, bury mammoths in a location that when the Earth rolls will keep them frozen, standing up with their feet cased in ice, rivers with fish swimming, in the act of swimming, frozen solid, musk running in a river that then freezes solid. But the Earth rolls up into a place where it takes those things that were happening at a lower latitude, they roll up into the North and South Pole, to the current North and South Pole, and you're going to have those things buried for us to then find, the frozen mammoths. And so that's the water that went there. And then if you get 7 miles a second, then that water and debris from the edges of the crack, all the rocks, all the debris that's going up, is going to escape Earth's gravity. And so now we're zooming out. Now the sun has a massive gravity well. It governs everything in our solar system. And so then that piece that leaves the Earth, the debris field leaves the Earth, and now it falls into the sun's gravity well. And from then on, it goes into whatever orbital path its velocity trajectory gave it to go in orbits around the sun instead of being attached to the Earth. So, and this is what I said at the ICR headquarters with Randy Galusa and his engineers, that he wanted to listen to this. I want to emphasize this point. The fountains of the great deep launched rocks and muddy water into space. So that's the premise of the hydroplate theory, that when the crack ruptured, the escaping water grabbing the sides of the crack, jettisoned from the Earth, it would have all been pulsed out, all going in the same direction with the same velocity. And you give that premise, then everything else in this statement, which comes from Walt Brown's book, 9th edition, is a fact of physics. As rocks moved farther away from the Earth, Earth's gravity became less significant to them, a fact of physics. And the gravity of nearby rocks became increasingly significant. So they're all going in a debris pile. The rocks are now coming together because of the nearby rocks become increasingly significant, a fact of physics. Consequently, many rocks, assisted by their mutual gravity and surrounding clouds of water vapor and the produced aerobraking, merged to become asteroids, comets. This is a comet theory. It's the same thing for asteroids. And that is a fact. If the water is going out, it creates an atmosphere. And so there's aerobraking, because these relative velocities of these rocks that they're spinning, even though they all went out together, they're still not together in the vacuum of space, except for they have moisture that slows them down. They would have all come very, very carefully together. Just like dropping a feather on your table. It's just going to drop on there like snowflakes, that powdery, super frozen snowflake, just barely come together. And that is so important. Drag forces caused by water vapor and thrust forces produced by the radiometer effect concentrated most smaller asteroids in what is now the asteroid belt, and the same is true for comets. Comets and asteroids have their same, they originated from the same process. This is an animation. I don't know if it's ever been shown. Bob Enyart and I worked with an animator to create this, and we didn't get it all finalized with how to use it before he went to go be with Jesus. And so, but I'm going to click on this and let you see it. This is what you would have been seeing if you were an observer from space when the crack is rupturing. And again, this is a simulation, but it's based on what would happen by known laws of physics. And so then, everything's leaving, all that debris is going out and pulsing and gathering together around large bodies that have a sphere of influence that are going to suck those things together and become very loosely tied together. And then it's going to go into the view of how it goes around the solar system. And it's not showing it coming together, but after time, all that debris is locked into that gravitational attraction, and that cloud would cause it to come together very loosely into a pile of debris, which is what asteroids and comets are. What are they finding? These are facts, except for creationists who reject the hydroplate theory. They say contamination. They contaminate the spacecraft with DNA fragments, with complex organic molecules, with lead-handed amino acids, with rounded boulders. Rounded boulders don't form in space. They form in a tumbling water environment. And they found rounded boulders, thousands of them on 67P. Rock piles covered in dirt, binary comets, asteroids, having moons. These things are really impossible for evolutionary minded people to say, how could an asteroid have a moon? How could two asteroids come together and so lightly touch they become a contact binary? They have no explanation for it. There is an explanation only by the hydroplate theory. because they used to have an environment of moisture around them that did aerobraking that allowed these things to happen. So the hydroplate theory, every single verse in the Bible that pertains to the flood, and it's not just Genesis, is completely consistent with the hydroplate theory. And the hydroplate theory has made many predictions that are being fulfilled, especially associated with space, because it's so easy to predict what you're going to find in space. But this evidence does not support what was expected by evolutionists when space probes were launched. They did, again, I talked to Dr. Brownlee, University of Washington, who was the key guy, the head guy on the Stardust space probe to go collect comet tail dust from the Vil-2 comet. And he found glycine and a left-handed amino acid. He told me in a phone conversation he was shocked. They did not anticipate to find that. And he was shocked that they found it. Stardust Space Probe, Dr. Brownlee, professor of astronomy, University of Washington, did a very successful mission. I mean, it was incredible what they did to make this happen. My first interaction with him, as far as me sending him information, on July 2004, I sent Dr. Brownlee predictions of Dr. Brown's work, and I got no response. Long story of how come that letter happened. It was actually a local professor here at the Olympic Community College was bad-mouthing the Bible because the Catholics said that the Earth is the center of the solar system, and so there was a student there. There was a student there who attended our church. And she told me about it. I made an appointment with them, and I said, the Bible doesn't say the Earth is the center of the solar system. The Catholics say that. And then we got into a discussion about, and I said, and you know what? The Bible tells us all kinds of things about the flood, and that Stardust space probe is going to come back and bring information that the flood was true. And so then he said, oh, well, I don't care about that. But Dr. Brownlee, he's the head of the Stardust space probe program. And so I sent him the predictions. I sent Dr. Brownlee the predictions of Dr. Brown. Saturday, January 14, 2006, the day before Stardust space probe landed, Dr. Brown writes an email by my encouragement and D. McClellan. We both encouraged Dr. Brown, write down your predictions in an email that we can document. So when they find everything that you say he's going to find, we can say, here's the email before it landed. And this is what he predicted. Olivine. I'm going to just read the blue for the interest of time here. Olivine is a silicate that I think will be found. Yes, it was found because the metals in olivine, iron, magnesium, make olivine dense and very likely to have been part of the pillars. And they found olivine. Surprised, shocked Dr. Brownlee when they found it. Number two, in blue, according to all theories of the origin of comets, except for the hydroplate theory, the water in comets should never have been liquid because outer space is too cold, especially where comets are thought to have formed. They're going to find material that requires liquid water. They found that that's exactly what they found in Stardust. And then Dr. Brown said, I explained to you, to D. McClellan, on the phone, 99, and you later asked Dr. Brownlee why crystalline materials as opposed to amorphous minerals should be found in comets. As I recall, you told me that Brownlee's response was that he didn't believe the data. So evolutionists, the data, I don't believe the data. And now we have creationists that think that comets and asteroids are part of the original creation and have all this evidence to reject that notion. From a biblical perspective, and they reject the notion of all the evidence that supports the ejected material from the Earth, which the Bible implies, has gone out to become these asteroids and comets. So he said, I don't believe the data, and he wanted to get more definitive data. Well, he got the data. But Walt Brown said, let's see. Well, what they found was exactly what Dr. Brownlee said he didn't believe the data on. If crystalline materials are brought back by Stardust, which it was, a good question to ask Brownlee is, how did crystalline material form in outer space? And you know what? He found it, and he can't explain it because it's not explainable. Organic molecules have been detected in comet tails spectroscopically since 1868, and he was just talking about they might find that. Well, they found a left-handed amino acid. And then other chemical, other elements such as aluminum iron, they were also found on stardust. And this is what Dr. Brownlee wrote at the end of the mission. The mission ended. 3 years later, he writes in October 2029, he wrote in 2009 his summary paper. And it's a mission with many scientific surprises. Comets, I'll read the whole thing. Comets are ancient bodies of frozen ice and dust that form beyond the orbit of most distant planets. They were expected to contain minerals that the solar system formed from, preserved in ice for billions of years. Well, he's admitting we expected something totally different than what we found. And then Dee McClellan, she was with Dr. Brownlee in the clean room when they were getting ready to open up the Stardust probe to start finding out what they caught in the aerogel, which was used to collect the material that was from the comet. And and he was talking about how we're going to find this and this and this. And she said, a high school teacher, hydroplate theory advocate said, but my simple way of understanding this is that I expect he will pop one of those particles in that expensive machine and find out it is the same stuff we find on Earth. And this will be very shocking and unexpected. These are words I hear from NASA researchers. She was perfectly right. The evolutionary origin of asteroids and comets, TNOs also, is falsified. The actual evidence showed that a high school science teacher and a NASA fellow, which is NASA ambassador, Dee McClellan's a NASA ambassador, that she was right just because she reads her Bible and the hydroplate theory. Then in April 29th, 2006, 4 months after Stardust capsule was open, I attended Dr. Brownlee's public lecture at the University of Washington, because I live here in the Seattle area, in which he discussed the shocking and unexpected findings of Stardust. After the lecture, I talked to Dr. Brownlee face-to-face. I gave him the copy of the Comet chapter and his predictions. The next, couple, 3 weeks later, I called him to ask him if he had finished reading Dr. Brown's work, and he said he wasn't going to because he knew that this was not how comets form. So he's in the same company with ICC and AIG, and I'm not going to say ICR anymore because ICR is at least letting other theories be investigated. And CMI, these are other organizations, well, they know it's wrong. They know hydroplate theory is wrong. And so let's just stick with what we're stuck on. 3 years later, August 18th, 2009. And by the way, when I was in the audience, I stood up and I asked one of the questions, and I have it recorded actually. And I said, did they find organics, any sign of life? And he wouldn't answer. He didn't answer the question. He did a political answer that did not answer the question. 3 years later, after the news media reported that glycine was also found on Stardust probe, I called Dr. Brownlee. He remembered me as the one who gave him Dr. Brown's chapter and predictions. I pointed out that everything that he, Brownlee, and other comet scientists are finding are perfectly consistent with the idea that comets formed as a result of debris that was ejected from the Earth. He didn't balk. That we went on for about 10 minutes. He listened, discussed with he listened and discussed with professional respect. He did not hang up on me as some nutcase because he knew he had a problem. At the end of the discussion, he wanted to read Dr. Brown's chapter. He wanted the email or the website address to read his online book. Again, I don't know if he ever did, but he wanted to do that because he knew he had a problem. Then Dr. Brownlee published the final findings of the Stardust results, and this is, when the international team of 200 scientists began examining the returned particles, we found that particles were indeed ancient building blocks of the solar system, but the nature and origin of the particles was quite unexpected. They wanted to keep the billions of years, but they knew this made no sense. What form was remarkable instead of rocky materials that formed around previous generations of stars. we found that most of the comet's rocky material formed inside our solar system at extremely high temperatures. Now, what he was saying is somehow these comets, asteroids must have gotten really close to the sun to create these minerals that can only form under high temperature, in some cases pressure, with liquid water. And then somehow they went back out into the far reaches of the solar system where it's very cold. He said that's how it happened. Well, we know as hydroplate theory advocates, the high temperature came from being in the fountains of the great deep, from being the pillars, the fountains of the great deep, the pressure and temperature that was there. And he says it was very exciting, not very exciting in the sense that they came up with what they wanted to. They found chondrules. And he says when they first presented it, 600 scientists' jaws dropped. They couldn't believe that how could this have been found? And he went on and on. You can read his article, and this PowerPoint program will be presented and posted on the hydroplate.org site. So 2 months earlier, Dr. Brownlee told me during our phone conversation that he was shocked by this discovery. He then concludes in his article, Stardust also had a variety of other surprises. One of the most unexpected was finding glycine, which on the phone conversation, the reason I called him was because it was news that they found it. He was admitting to me how he was shocked and had no idea. And he knew it wasn't contamination. Comet asteroid original creation origin is falsified. Evidence supports that they came from the Earth. Evolutionists admit evidence does not support their theories. And evolutionists wanted to read hydroplate theory after being at a loss to explain what they found on Comet Will 2. Then on June 22, 2016, I again contacted Dr. Brownlee and about, people were starting to talk about space probes need to go figure out how to, give a nudge to an asteroid to keep it from hitting the Earth. And I just wrote him a letter. I don't know if he never responded. I wrote him an email. The physics behind the chosen plan may work for one composition, solid rock, which is what I knew they're thinking asteroids and comets are, or asteroids are, but fail if the asteroid consists of a loosely held together rock pile. I mean, I was sincerely concerned that they would do this project based on what we as hydroplate theory advocates know. They're floating rock piles. You can't just go hit a rock and divert it, a solid rock asteroid, and divert it and think you're going to save the planet. So with that, continuing to support Dr. Brown may be right with the importance of knowing what comets and asteroids are made of. Should one be out there with our name on it, wouldn't it be worth it to get together for a couple-hour discussion? You name the requirements. He never responded to that. He lives in the area. And I'm still trying to get together with a sit down with Dr. Brownlee using Dee McClellan as a go-between. He didn't answer that. So unknown to me, at the time I'm writing that letter, they're funding the DART space mission. Launched November 24th, 2021. Impact to the asteroid Dimorphos was on September 26th last year. And this is what that project did. This was another successful space project. It was to test whether or not we could smack this Dimorphos binary asteroid, the moon. The Dimorphos was the moon to the asteroid Didymos, and in smacking it, that you would slow down the orbit. So then the spacecraft hits into Dimorphos, drops a Leica Cube camera off to watch the collision, and then smacks into it, and that slows it down, which makes its orbit speed up as it goes. That's what the plan was, to speed it up. And if they were going to consider a success if it changed the orbital period by a minute. This is what actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. 2 minutes out. Does not look like one single rock to me.
Listen to that. Does not look like one single rock to me.
14,000 miles per hour, Lori. 14,000 miles per hour. And remember, 45 minutes ago, 55 minutes ago, we couldn't even resolve this this object in space, and now you can see us zeroing in right on target.
And we're now dropping the clock and we'll go by loss of signal to confirm impact.
Right. Yes.
So the
Imagine we'll
left
get that
is
loss of
the
signal,
mother
then we'll hear from
asteroid,
Dana
the
Adams
bigger
again,
one,
letting us know.
Didymus, and it's heading in for Dimorphos.
I feel like that'll be a crystal clear signal.
I think so. I think we're starting to see more resolution. In fact, look at that. Didymos has even gone out of the view. We're now just seeing Dimorphos.
This is remarkable stuff.
Oh my goodness, look at that.
Looks like control system settling down, angular rates look really good. I think we're gonna get the investigation team some good pictures.
Wow.
No, come on, we can do better than that.
Starting to see those individual boulders there. You can see shadows.
Individual boulders there.
Impact.
This is huge.
Oh my goodness, look at that. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Looks to me like we're headed straight in. Oh, wow.
Floating rock pile.
Oh my goodness.
Dr. Brown's
Yeah.
prediction.
Oh,
6,
wow.
Asteroids are floating rock piles.
3, 2, 1.
We're waiting for full confirmation. All right. We got it? Ready?
So I wrote the following email that day or the next day. Since DART confirmed what all HPT advocates suspected would be the case, that Dimorphos was a rock pile, I thought I should take a step at predicting what the Leica Cube camera, the spacecraft shot out a little camera to watch the collision, will show. And my guess, DART is hitting millions of rocks at various sizes and shapes and dust throughout, all combined into a somewhat spherical shape. As such, one would expect that the energy, 2.7 tons, will transfer energy from the impact site to the rocks in the immediate area, which then transfers some energy to the rock next to them and then to the rock next to those, until energy in each of the thousands of directions has created enough acceleration of enough mass to bring motion to a stop in that direction. I would suspect this would result in Dimorphos having some of its surface rocks at places all around the sphere of Dimorphos being accelerated away from the surface, some which will escape Dimorphos. And Brian Nichol did the calculation of escape velocity of being 4 inches a second. Therefore, the rock on the surface that receives enough impact energy to accelerate it at 4 inches per second will escape the Dimorphos sphere of influence and go into their own orbits around the sun. As such, Dimorphos will lose some of its mass, and quite possibly, despite NASA's promises that based on wrong assumptions, that the DART mission would not create a hazard to our planet, but some of the ejected rocks into orbit paths that will someday, but some of the ejected rock will go into orbits that will someday impact Earth. Could. If so, I suspect they will call the swarm the DART meteor shower. Well, it turns out they're going to call it the DART nuclear attack, because then there was an article that came out just last week about it. This pulverized rock, reading the blue, will be ejected in an expected cone shape with velocities that will put debris in their orbits around the sun. Be more light because there's so much debris being kicked up by the rock pile with a bunch of dust of all different kinds and sizes and shapes that it's going to explode and create a great light, a reflection. But one thing for sure, the DART mission planners thought they would be hitting solid asteroid, which was based on a Big Bang paradigm of how asteroids were formed. The results of the DART test were exactly as predicted by HPT, not predicted by me. It's kind of like, it's just HPT predicts what's going to happen, and physics actually. And this is what the Leica cube saw at the impact. So let me do this. This is the mother asteroid of Didymus. This is Dimorphos being hit, ejecting all of its debris, and all of a sudden becoming extremely bright. This is going to be a picture from a telescope, Earth-based telescope, watching the impact. This right here is actually the light of Dimorphos and Didymus together, because you can't see the difference between the two. And what's going to happen is the spacecraft, unseen, is coming this way to hit the Dimorphos asteroid, but you can't tell the difference between the two asteroids. So the spacecraft is coming this way, and look at that. It blows all that debris and rock off. And it produced a comet tail. I mean, it probably hit the asteroid and unlocked some subsurface still frozen water, gave it a comet tail appearance, along with all the debris that was going out. And so then I sent another email on March 27, 2023, where Dee McClellan, I know I'm running out of time here, sent this to Dr. Brownlee. And again, she was personal friends with Dr. Brownlee. I suspect that he got this, but I can't be sure. If success was expected to be a change in Dimorphos's orbit by 73 seconds, why was it 32 minutes instead? Am I wrong to think that this must mean that the density mass of Dimorphos must have been about that much less than expected? And I still think, I don't think there is another explanation. So we have to keep in mind that they have the estimation of the mass of TNOs out there, the mass of asteroids, the mass of comets. But every time they actually go to measure the mass of these things, they find out so much less than what they expected. And so the advocate, the detractors, the critics of the hydroplate theory goes, oh, there's no way that much mass from the Earth could have gone up into space, because look at all this stuff that they think weighs this much. Well, it actually apparently weighs a whole lot less, because there's empty void pockets in these places in asteroids and comets. Question 2, it appears that the amount ejected that was accelerated away from Dimorphos, that it must have been more of a rock pile asteroid than what mission planners were expecting. How could a pile of rocks come together to form Dimorphos? And it looked like Dimorphos also had a rock pile. It also looked like the mother asteroid, Didymus, was a rock pile. So the more important question is, how could a binary asteroid form out of rock piles? That they don't have an answer. Only hydroplate theory can answer that. Question 3, for a while there was a comet tail appearance. What was learned from that? Now that would be interesting. He hasn't answered. Was there water vapor released by the impact which contributed to the comet appearance? If so, then the question becomes, how did water and rocks come together to form a binary asteroid? And then the clinchers were, what was the calculated amount of ejecta? Has anyone done an analysis on the orbital paths that the ejecta has taken? And is it possible that someday Earth will be having a dark meteor shower? And he never answered this. But 4 months later, NASA did. This was March. 4 months later, 5 months later, NASA, in August 11, last month, NASA now admits DART created a potential hazard to Earth. NASA asteroid DART accidentally creates a boulder swarm that could impact the Earth with as much energy as Hiroshima detonation. Scientists have discovered that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration accidentally released a storm of boulders as deadly as Hiroshima. And that's because they didn't believe, well, we all know everything about science is wrong when it doesn't believe the truth of God's word, and make speculations based on evolutionary paradigms. And it said that they found, so here's the picture. And if you, I don't know how good you can see this, but see these little dots here? That's Hubble taking a picture of this. This is still Didymus Dimorphos, and this is the remaining comet tail on December 19th. And these are all the ejected debris, which are now moving away from the asteroid. And see, this asteroid was close to the Earth's orbital path. So as these debris move away, that they're going to have the potential to get into Earth's gravitational well, and that would be bad. And so then there's a sample coming tomorrow. Tomorrow, OSIRIS-REx is bringing down space debris, and I see the timing there. It's bringing back space debris, and I'm going to have you just watch this short video, and we'll wrap it up.
In only 5 days, on September 24th, a sample of a giant asteroid is going to parachute its way down to Earth. The asteroid is called Bennu, and it is considered a potentially hazardous object, and that's because it's about 500 meters across, and it has a 1 in 2,700 chance of hitting Earth in 159 years. A few years ago, NASA actually sent a spacecraft to land on the surface of this asteroid and collect a sample to bring back to Earth, and it went crazy. Thankfully, because it was so far away, the spacecraft was pretty much operating on its own. So it had a sensor to detect when it touched the surface, and then it had 5 seconds to collect materials before it took off again. And this saved it because when the spacecraft touched the surface, it literally punched through it and started sinking. It sank 0.5 meters. So already the surface of this asteroid was way different than we thought, and the sample capsule has traveled in total 7 years and is going to land in Utah in 5 days.
Wow, that's some amazing footage. Oh my goodness.
Nothing like technical difficulties. Evidence is clear. And so there's more here, but we'll take Q&A. There was just a little bit left, and I missed it by 4 slides. So
that's fine. That's fine. Do you want to just summarize those 4 slides? It's like,
the 4 slides are that it's the typical Peter. I want to emphasize this. The evidence is there. Those who reject biblical creation, the flood, manufacture fairy tales and attempt to explain objects in our solar system. But the biblical Christian can have an answer that is consistent with the Bible and science, and use that knowledge to reject the deceptions and be a witness to others, even Dr. Brownlee, if they use HPT. If you use that, these things were created, then you're contrary to the Bible that everything was good. If you say that everything that they're finding in space that shows that life, evidence of life was ejected and put on those things, then you're sounding like the Pope for hundreds of years. And I think that Christians should unite on giving a strong argument that can oppose the lies and deceptions.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, it's too bad we weren't banging this theory for the last 40 years. Quick questions. Might rounded boulders occur due to clouds of rocks bumping into each other?
Of course. And that's what would have happened. That's exactly what would have happened. Basically, I said rounded boulders. You usually find them in riverbeds, but if you have a 60-mile deep crack in the ocean that's opened up, and you have all the rock from the crust coming down into a hypersonic jet of expanding steam, which is going to cool off as it expands up to the top, and it's tumbling those rocks together, you bet it's going to round it off. It's going to be a rock tumbler. Sure.
When will the Dart meteor storm hit the Earth?
That was what I was asking in that question. Has anybody done? And, I don't have the capability. They know. I would suspect they know, because they've been watching that debris field. They can know how much time and in what direction those different ejected boulders from Dimorphos, and they're going to be able to spin that forward very easily, and they will know. And I actually think that this recent article was because they know they know.
Sure.
I think they're just telling us now because they forgot to carry the decimal point.
Right. Right. So is the Bennu asteroid sample still expected to land tomorrow?
It is. They expect it to land tomorrow. And actually, I should read that I already know what's going to be on there, and they already know what's going to be on there, because when OSIRIS-REx went to go collect it, they were doing spectrometry by the mothership, OSIRIS-REx. And they had an article back in 2018 that says OSIRIS-REx finds hints of past water on asteroid Bennu, hydrated minerals. So we already know it's going to be the same thing they found on Stardust. They're going to find hydrated minerals. And this is the thing that bothers me so much by the creationist movement itself. Everybody circling the wagons is they are increasing their new deception of Earth being seeded with these evidences of biological life, and that's how life started on Earth. And when we should have been there saying, oh, no, the life planet Earth, during a judgment of God, ejected this material, this life material into space, and now it's coming back, or we're finding it. And it's going to come back as judgment in the last days. That should be the Christian unified response, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree. From a non-hydroplate perspective, could boulders be rounded in space without water?
If God created them that way.
But they went.
Let's say that God created a whole bunch of meteors that are up there in space. Again, that's not very good when they're going to come down and crash on our heads. But in space, there's nothing to erode. There's not even atmosphere. There's not even wind to erode anything. If it goes up there jagged, it's going to stay jagged unless it hits something.
And then it'll be even more jagged. Yeah. We got a lot of great questions. We got Q&A at 6:00, I believe. And there's one who said, I'm so thankful how every presenter hasn't just taught about the importance of science, but has diligently and faithfully gone back to scripture and the gospel. Praise God. And if you want to see Pastor Lee, his website, his website is, let's see, Calvary PO. Yep, calvarypo.org, calvarypo.org. And you can find some of these emails there. That's where I found mine for Thursday night. And then if you want to hear him preach, it's Calvary Church Port Orchard on YouTube. That's Calvary Church Port Orchard on YouTube. And thank you so much, Pastor Lee. I think this is what we really need. We got the weapons. Now let's go advance. And we are going to take a quick break here and make sure our next speaker, which is going to be, oh, that's not it. It is going to be Doug McBurney. And I'm looking forward to this. So everybody take a quick break and we'll see you at the top of the hour. And thank you again, Pastor Lee. I'm so thankful you did this. This is what we needed.
You're welcome. God bless you.